Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
The Attorney General, Lynch, has come out and, said if you speak bad about radical Islam or whatever, or something you say is incendiary and might lead to violence, we're going to arrest you. He said to back off that because that violates the First Amendment. You can say things that people could interpret as hateful or mean and that might cause somebody to be violent. You just can't have a call to action and say, we should go out and do ABC. I'm not even going to say it because they'll take it out of context and claim I said it. The last thing I want is people to go out and randomly attack Muslims or anybody else. Usually the idiots that do that go into a liquor store or a gas station and shoot a Sikh, which actually have huge wars with the Islamists for hundreds of years in India and are a big part of the British military because of that. But people see a guy wearing a big purple or pink turban and they think, hey, newsflash, it's like the idiot that went and shot up the Sikh temple and killed a bunch of people. Remember that a few years ago? Because he thought it was Muslims. Only an idiot. I mean, what type of idiot goes to kill people and doesn't even get the right group? Well, the type of folks, in fact, I've actually known people who get so upset by 9/11 and things. I know one guy who got upset emotionally. He wasn't even a stupid guy, and he went and beat up one of these people at a gas station and got arrested for it. So, absolutely, people should not attack anybody for what color they are or what religion. And it is true, most Muslims just want to live their life and be left alone. Most Muslim women don't want to wear hoods over their heads. Their husbands don't either. They want to come here to get away from that. But our government's been backing radical Islam all over the world that's going around taking Islam over and radicalizing it. And Lord Monckton is an expert on Islam. And I've done a lot of research too, and he's right. There was about a 400-year period where the West was in the Dark Age, and they were not doing all this persecution, and it actually helped contribute to the Renaissance. So it really is true that Islam has not been as radical as it is now before. It's had expansionist periods, it's had very radical periods, it's had periods that weren't. Right now, because the population's exploding, because of the Saudis being the main force behind Islam now, it's bad news, folks, in the mainstay. And by the way, that's not anti-Islamic or anti-Arab, because that's where that centers. Islam's all over the world, one of the biggest religions there is, probably the biggest. The bad news is for other Muslims and other Arabs and other people in those areas, because that's who they kill. 9 out of 10 people or more killed by radical Islamists are Muslims. Look it up. 98+%, it varies depending on what attacks there have been, but 98% of terrorism worldwide is Islamic. And Melissa Harris Perry gets up there on television and says, don't show her in her hood, don't show her in her hijab or whatever it's called, the burqa, because this is stereotypical. No, lady, that's what they wear. I mean, you got some of the Orthodox Jews cover up their faces. And I get also that even in the times of, Maid Marian and the, 1,000 years ago in Robin Hood, that women wore that. And you know why they wore it? Because the upper classes had whiter skin. What does Schwarzenegger mean? It just means black plowman, because if you came from the lower classes, you had tan skin because you worked in the fields. And it was an elitism to wear all over the world, Japan to the Middle East to wherever, the same cultures, same ideas. Women wore gloves and high-heel shoes, meaning they didn't have to work. Sometimes they grew their fingernails a foot long. It's ridiculous. And we see expressions of that today. And women wore even their faces covered up when they went out to ride in a carriage or whatever, because there was so much manure and stench and people dumping their bathroom products out their windows. And so, yes, women wore cloaks and covered themselves up the richer you were, because you didn't want to be around the profane. So, yeah, if some Muslim princess went out 500 years ago, you bet she covered up. She didn't want to be out there in all the flies. Then it became stylish. Then everyone made their women do it, and it's a style oppression. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, this is the takeover of the West. This is the end of human liberty as we know it and the birth of planetary world government being ratified and openly announced and declared as we speak in Paris, France. Lord Monckton will join us from Paris, France, coming up on Wednesday. We have other reporters there as well from the New American Magazine and others that will also be joining us. Let me do this now. Let me try to cover as much of the news. I've mentioned a lot of it, but I want to really drill into the news. Big news is up on drudgereport.com. Hillary demands tech stop ISIS. She also says she wants to stop banker bailouts that she helped orchestrate. And, of course, you need to understand, even the New York Times admits that it lets Facebook, Twitter, and others restrict speech that could be deemed as, quote, hurtful or that disagrees. And Paul wrote about this a month ago. We got the notice that if any of our speech disagrees with anyone, it actually says disagrees, that you may be suspended or kicked off Facebook. And it's really kind of oxymoronic because here we are on Facebook that we never really used until recently. And I did 2 videos yesterday that have almost 2 million views combined. At my house and at work, just flip on a camera, talk for 10 minutes, 1 million people watch it. Think about that. One video had 251,000 on it. Another had 877,000. That was last week. If you go back, there was another one I shot yesterday. You add them all together. Look at that one from Friday, 1,190,000. Do you think Hillary Clinton likes that when she gets up before Congress and says we're losing the info war? Wonder who they're talking about. And I only bring this up because as the enemy rolls out its plan, the credibility of a Matt Drudge and Alex Jones and Joseph Farah is only going to intensify. Take somebody like Tucker Carlson, a libertarian. He's on Wednesday with us for an hour. Started a lot of big media operations. His dad was with Voice of America. And I've hung out with him privately and stuff. And, you know, obviously he now knows the season is here where he can get away with being more libertarian, more anti-New World Order, because more of it's out in the open. And the fact that he can go further now shows how much of the info war we're winning. The fact that Donald Trump can come on this show and sound like yours truly, or vice versa. The fact that he would come on this show knowing he'll be demonized for it. I mean, I'm not going to toot my horn here, but Donald Trump's plugged InfoWars 5 or 6 times the last year, and I've talked to his people and him and others, and, you know, obviously, to anybody watching, they're listeners. I'll just leave it at that. So many times we call up to get a congressman or woman on, and they go, oh, yeah, I was listening to your show yesterday, or I was listening today, I'd love to come on, or, listen, I'm a big listener, but my constituency isn't ready for this, so I can't come on. But, by the way, here's some really good intel on a bill that's going to be introduced next week. We have congressmen and women's offices sending us tips, sending us intel, but they won't come on. Committee chairman, you name it. But see, Dr. Steve Pieczenik called up this weekend. He wants to come on. I'm glad to have him on. One of the founders of Delta Force, one of the heads of the founder of the hostage rescue teams, ran some of the biggest hostage rescue operations, also ran psychological warfare for the State Department and directed the CIA. With some of their policies, ran the Camp David Accords, you name it. I mean, he is a big fish in all of that. But this is a world now where folks don't know who Chuck Yeager is. And he said, no, this is a major breaking point. Just like the bin Laden raid being fake and the SEALs going public, them having to kill a bunch of them, just like the other bellwether events, the Piers Morgan event, he said Trump coming on signifies the death of the mainstream media and that you are now the new media. And we're not bragging about InfoWars. What we're saying is the enemy is in trouble. The usurpers, the occupiers, the interlopers, those that have come in. So Hillary's in the New York Times. Hillary demands tech stop ISIS. They let ISIS recruit. They let them flying out of the U.S. It was a project of Saudi Arabia, NATO, the United States, Turkey, France, the UK, Israel, Pakistan. She says you're going to hear all the familiar complaints. That's a quote of freedom of speech Ms. Clinton said in an hour-long speech in a questions and answer session at the Sabian Forum, an annual gathering of Brookings institutions that focuses mostly on Israel's security issues. She's there at a powerful Israeli forum, basically, trying to get the Israel lobby to jump on board to restrict free speech on the internet. And we've got Zuckerberg running around meeting with the communist Chinese leaders 4 or 5 months ago in the U.S. on how to censor the internet and admitting it. People go, well, that's an oxymoron. Why would you be on Facebook with 3 million likes between all our channels? One of them has about 1 million. And how would you be reaching 1 million people or more a day just with videos? Well, the point is they've got to get all this lined up and legally put in place first before they do it, because it's a big deal. But little sites are getting knocked off all the time because they don't have the power to expose it or have a lawsuit over it. Because, see, you can argue all day long that, oh, Facebook belongs to Facebook. Well, that'd be like if you advertised certain prices at a grocery store, but when somebody else showed up, you said, oh, well, that label doesn't mean for you. That milk's not $3 a gallon. It's $15 a gallon for you. You see, you can't advertise it as a free open forum and then have InfoWars bring you millions and millions of people and vice versa in this public commons and then turn around and censor what we're doing. So that's the battle that's taking place right now on Facebook. People ask, well, why are you on Facebook? I'm on Facebook because we're using that platform to reach new audiences and then bring them to InfoWars, bring them to the Nightly News, bring them to our own servers, bring them to our own platforms that are our main base, our main fortress. But then without that, we have another ring and then another ring and another ring and all sorts of different media operations, because from day one, I've dealt with censorship and hack attacks and moves to shut us down and shut us up. And it's not that I was ever some super genius when it came to all this. I experienced it. Like, why do I have my own comment system so that when people make death threats, the police show up here, I'll just use a third party and then it's their problem? You know, it's been trial and error. But now in the info war, we have some of the best ideas, some of the most accurate information, and some of the best delivery systems outside of the enemy operation there are. But we still engage the enemy via their platforms. And when I use words like enemy, folks, let me tell you, they're the enemy of your due process, of your wealth, of your private property, of your children, of your health, of your sanity, of your future. You want to be usurped, 21st century style? You want to be overwritten in an info war? You're experiencing it. So they're declaring absolute war on the internet and claiming it's to fight ISIS, which they incubated, they created. And now they want to take your liberties, they want to take your free speech, they want to take your guns, they want to take your right to travel in the name of countering people who they let fly in with fake names and fake passport. Speaking of a double standard, let's look at this little stack of news right here. Falling oil prices. Who are the winners and losers? We told you this 3 years ago. BBC now breaks it down. Saudi Arabia admits that they are bankrupting everyone else by having oil so low. And as soon as the U.S. is bankrupt and Russia is bankrupt, they actually say it at OPEC. This is public. That after U.S. producers are bankrupt and after Russia's bankrupt, losing literally hundreds of billions of dollars a week, the Saudis are selling oil at lower than it costs to produce it. And once they're done, then they'll jack up prices 5-10 times what they used to be. That's what Walmart does. They come in and have 5 or 6 producers. They pay them a year contract to produce eggs at a glut to drive down prices. Then they know the people can't produce anymore. When they lower what they'll pay them, most of them go bankrupt, and they have one company to deal with. These are just tactics that aren't free market, folks, that are monopolistic. Clear Channel would come into a town for 5 years and sell advertising at 1/10 what it should be until everybody else went bankrupt. Then they jack up the prices to the rooftops. That's just a tactic, folks. And you need to be aware of these tactics. And I'm not demonizing Clear Channel. That's what media companies do. But the public is so childlike. We'd talked 3 years ago about them lowering oil prices to bankrupt U.S. oil production, Canadian oil production, and others. Shut up, conspiracy theorists. There's nothing in Saudi Arabia. No one has any power but Jews. Literally. Hey, Saudi Arabia is bankrupting the oil industry. Shut up and stop making apologies for the Jews. All these mentally ill Jew-obsessed people. It's like, it's comical if it wasn't so serious. And they give up their own free will. People that think it's the Catholics or the Jews or any one group, they don't have any power. The reason you're not successful is because of the Jews. And the reason I'm successful is not because I'm hardworking and intelligent and a good orator and a good manager and all the rest of it. It's because of the Jews. Always the same moronic idiocy. It's like saying the Muslims when there's like 10 different groups. I know who the bad group is. It's the Wahhabist. It's the Saudi Arabian scum government. That's who it is. And then there's other criminal groups, and I go after all of them. But falling oil prices, who are the winners and losers, goes over it. Meanwhile, they're continuing massive sanctions against Russia to bankrupt them and admitting it, but not ISIS. Every move you make, every breath you take, the globalists will be watching you, but not the terrorists who they let into the country. Now they need to censor the internet and free speech to keep you safe. And the Attorney General comes out and says, watch what you say, we might arrest you. But notice there was a big backlash, and now she's had to back off, at least for now. But how dare them blame our Second Amendment and our free speech for what radical, incompatible people coming to this country are doing? They won't let Wahhabists into Iran because they know they start killing people. They wouldn't let them into Syria because they start killing people. But they let them in here, folks, from jihad training camps. By the way, Nico was just in here during the break. He goes, Alex, when you plug, and it's about to sell out, by the way, in the next couple of days, the InfoWars Premium Power Pack, I keep saying it's a third the size of a small briefcase. He goes, yeah, that's true, Alex, but the actual battery itself with the jumper cables and all the different plugs and power outlets and every other converter you can imagine, I mean, this is just such an amazing unit, is the smaller than an average hard drive. What, it's about 5.5 inches long, about 3 inches wide. It's just crazy. It's got a 15-volt 1A input, output, 5.07, 2.1A, and a whole bunch of others, USB, you name it. It's got engine start connection. It's got the powerful torch flashlight, $119. The same unit's $150 or more. We private labeled it, so we're able to get around the contractual rules to not be able to sell it for less than 140 something. $119.95. And quite frankly, we sell more of these as we have the lowest price. I don't get why people just don't lower prices. It's kind of a moronic greediness out there, as we still, make like 30, 40 bucks on these. And it helps fund the info war. But that will sell out. We will be ordering more of these. It's a big hit. Every house, every car really should have one. I know my truck and my car certainly do. Lastly, Deep Cleanse. We've had it 3 times. And it's sold out every time. And if we could keep enough of it in stock, it would be our best-selling product. And it's because folks that are into vitamins and minerals and stuff know how good it is. For the first time ever, we're discounting it $5. So instead of $29.95, it's $24.95. It's got 5-star reviews. It's got Shilajit in it. It's got a whole bunch of other key things like zeolites. It's organic Shilajit and a bunch of other compounds. Amazing detoxer. Works for me and my family like a charm. And the nutraceutical heads out there that are really the experts, go to the third-party sites, read the reviews. They just drool over the products. Well, of course they do. We go out and get the game changers because we want to have the best, because we want it to really work, because we want to fund the info war and smash the globalists or die trying. I just don't get the world's view of, like, not giving people the best deal, not finding the best products, not wanting to treat people like you want to be treated. People keep asking why we're so successful. Because we're crazed. That's why. We're not slaves. We're awake. We're conscious. We treat people like we want to be treated. And that's how you're treating us, and God bless you. We're able to fund the info war. We're able to hire some more reporters soon, put more folks in the field, all because of your support buying the products at InfoWarsStore.com or InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139. Now, coming up, we've got Trump accuses the media of glamorizing terrorists. That's what they're doing. See, I saw them glamorizing ISIS and Al-Qaeda and al-Nusra the last 5 years, and I was the first to say it. I'm not bragging. I just don't. I said, this is real. We're going to be attacked. We're going to have asymmetrical attacks on government buildings, shopping malls, military bases, community centers, theaters. You're seeing it all. And I believe, here's the most important thing I'm going to cover when we come back. And I meant to say this at the very start of the show, but I didn't. If you analyze Obama's speech, it tells you a lot. Not just they're going after people's freedoms to travel, to own guns, extrajudicially. Just, again, incredible announcements. Every law journal should be just freaking out right now. This was a declaration of war against the Magna Carta, Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Bill of Rights, respectively, in order of their production. The gun grab, all of that is a side issue compared to the fact, though, that in the main, he had to admit Major Hassan was a terrorist 6 years later at Fort Hood. He had to admit a bunch of other stuff was terrorism because they know it's hurting them too bad saying it isn't terror, and that blew up in their face, showing they have no credibility. But what's even bigger than that? He's getting everybody ready for terror attacks. They have created such a giant multi-100,000 person system, and ISIS caught on a little too good for him. It was meant to sweep the Middle East and Africa for Saudi Arabia. Now it's spilling over here. They may not be able to stop the attacks, folks. And they're getting ready for this. Or they may be behind them. We're going to talk to a spy on the other side, Dr. Steve Pieczenik, straight ahead and get his take on all this and more. I'm Alex Jones. And I am Alex Jones, your host. If you just tuned in for the first time, as a libertarian broadcast, it is naked that we have a corrupt, out-of-control elite that is waging war against the very free market system that made this country so great. And we've got Melissa Harris Perry on TV saying, don't show this Malik lady in her hijab or hood on her head because, you know, it stereotypes Muslims. Well, I mean, 99%, 98%, depending on the year, of terrorism is Islamic. And the biggest victim of radical Islamic garbage are Muslims in the Middle East. And so now we see Turkey running into Iraq and attacking Iraqi forces that were about to take out an ISIS stronghold. You've got NATO bombing a military base, a Syrian military base. That's in the Associated Press. You've got Turkey yesterday threatening to blow up Russian ships in the Mediterranean. And Erdogan saying if we see any of your weapons pointed at us, we're going to attack, shooting down the Russian plane, blowing up the rescue helicopter. They're really mad that the Russians have exposed, it's not hundreds of millions, it's now billions in oil being trucked in. They're now destroying that. Our own military, and we've had Colonel Schaefer and countless others on, told us 2-3 years ago that our military was overthrowing Assad, and putting Saudi Arabia and al-Qaeda forces in. And so now you've kind of got the State Department and the CIA and the Turks and others and the Saudis trying to still win this battle of five armies. That's what it is, not using a Tolkien term for no reason. There's like 5 factions at least running around in just an insane asylum quagmire. And our government initiating this 5 years ago in this whole leftist organized Arab Spring, where they then put radical Wahhabists in charge. And then we have liberal feminists, saying how wonderful the headdresses are and how maybe we should adopt it, a sickening liberal fetish with fascist radical Islam. So you've got all that happening. And everybody knows I exposed the Gulf Wars and all of it as frauds and synthetic made-up terror. I started seeing in the last few years, though, this whole Islamic State thing and more, really being allowed to recruit, being allowed to build up, being funded by Saudi Arabia. We and others exposed it. Now it's blown up, and I have trouble even knowing where it's all going. I don't think the establishment knows. I think it's out of control. That's why the former head of Defense Intelligence has come out 3 times now on television in the last 2 months and said, we were ordered to fund ISIS and al-Qaeda consciously. It's a horrible idea. I don't know what the president's thinking. To have former generals, 2-, 3-, and 4-star generals on TV saying this is horrible shows you the military is just beside themselves with all of this. And I'm not just saying that to make the military feel good and make them the heroes. It really is true. And Dr. Pieczenik will be with us about 20 minutes into the next hour. I don't want to just spend all day on what he wanted to come on about the InfoWar and the success of this show, though it's important to admit that to show the weakness of the establishment media. It's not really our strength, it's their weakness. I want to pick his brain as a real expert on Islamic terror. He was involved in Camp David early on, the founding of Delta Force right through that, then a bunch of big famous hostage situations that he helped resolve when they had hundreds of hostages. He was also involved, according to London Telegraph and other major papers, in the Italian government with a whole bunch of other stuff dealing with the communists and others, but he'll never speak to that really on air. His website, stevepieczenik.com. But so much is happening right now, and this is a time in history, clearly, where the stars are aligning for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so that's why I want to get his take on the general world. But, Doctor, I'd like to just throw a question out, have you talk a couple minutes, move to the next question. There's so much to talk about. What would you like to start out with?
I want to start with the fact that today is December 7th, when we in the United States government performed the first stand down in 1941 on December 7th, and that was FDR and the attack on Pearl Harbor. From that day on, 60 years later, our government continued to do stand downs, false flags under Bush, Cheney, and we had 9/11, we had the attack in Iraq. That was a disaster. We went to 3 wars. That was a disaster. We went into Yemen, Sudan, Somalia. Nowhere along the line did our generals or admirals stop any civilian president from saying this is a disaster. It's great that all the DIA operatives came out afterwards and said that this was a problem. But I have asked repeatedly our intelligence community to stand up and stop the president of the United States, be it Bush, Cheney, Clinton, or Obama. Obama has been a disaster from day one. His history has been nothing but a contrived absurdity about a CIA operative born of a CIA grandmother and mother and grandfather who had no background, no experience whatsoever, and was voted in without any vetting by the Secret Service, the National Security, or any organization in the United States. You and I could not have become president of the United States the way Obama did. And what did he do? He created a false flag and a stand-down issue with the killing of Osama bin Laden, which never occurred, since you correctly defined 14 years ago that Osama bin Laden was dead. So we had an Admiral McRaven, the SEAL team, which was just a shame. It's a disgrace in the United States that they stood up and said they killed Osama bin Laden, when in fact they had even been dead for 14 years. So we have a collusion among the President of the United States, who's created false issues, not only in Benghazi, not only in Osama bin Laden, but in Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook was par excellence the description of a non-existent killing of a so-called Asperger's individual who supposedly killed 22 kids and several adults with a lot of machinery and a lot of heavy equipment. It was nonsense. It never occurred. Sandy Hook was shut down as a school in 2008. Since that time, Obama has criminally, consistently developed stand-down and false flags all over the United States.
Well, let's shift gears then, Dr. Pieczenik. I want to expand on this. Looking at the big picture, as a guy that was at the highest levels of major global operations,
yes.
Specifically, what do you see happening with these jihad attacks happening all over Europe, now happening in the U.S., the media attempting to say it wasn't jihad attack, that blew up in their face. I mean, they are really making some idiot moves right now. What do you think's the larger situation behind this?
The larger situation is that we are creating, the United States, along with NATO forces, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, we're creating strategic tension points all over the Middle East in order to create conflict so that we can control the situation. First, we create disorganization and chaos, and then we come in to presumably control the situation in the Middle East. This is completely created by our capability and our incapacity to control chaos. We've created the chaos through the CIA. We created the chaos through SOCOM and the military forces. We then went into ISIS. We created ISIS with the help of Turkey and Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Dubai. And then we wanted to use that as a counterforce to the Iranian recognition, to the Shiites, and use it as a counterforce to Bashar Assad. Bashar Assad would not comply, neither did Russia. So what's happening is we're getting into a confrontation created by Obama and his neocon advisors, who again will not stand down and are supporting Israel to create a position in the Middle East where Israel and the United States can still demand that they're Muslim terrorists all over the world. For the most part, I've got to be very frank, the Muslims are basically fighting the Muslims. It's not an issue that really concerns
Shiite-Sunni civil war. Why are they allowing it to blow back?
Well, the blowback is simply because the San Bernardino issue, I'm still not sure where it stands in terms of a false flag. Number one, it's very rare to have a standing shooting operation in an office where you have basically disabled individuals.
And by the way, it is incredible. They were having a live shooting drill. This is ABC News. They were having a shooting drill now when this reportedly happened.
Not only that, they've been having a shooting drill in a center of where disabled veterans and others were living, and having it on a monthly basis. So that really was, number one, an S1 flag. Number two, you had a woman who supposedly was in Pakistan, went to Saudi Arabia, was less than 100 pounds, being able to wear a vest, at the same time carry guns, and at the same time shoot and Twitter, absolutely impossible. And at the same time, we had a...
So why would they allow a jihad false flag? And to be clear...
Because there's one issue that you have brought out repeatedly and correctly, and that was the Sandy Hook issue transposes everything we have here, and that is gun control for Obama. His last wish, and dying wish, may well be dying wish, is that we have a gun control in the United States. That is not going to happen. And at the same time, he has really committed criminal acts against the United States with the help, once again, of our CIA, our intelligence community, and other elements of our government.
Well, let me expand on that. I've sent Joe Biggs to a bunch of these. He never thinks they're a false flag. He's a combat vet, smart guy. He says because of the drill at the same time. He says because of the tweeting while the killing's going on. He says because of the drill at the exact same time and other things. He, bare minimum, thinks that they had warned people locally they were ready. Not that they were involved, but that higher-ups opened the door to make sure it went ahead and happened. They gave them the passport. They let her back in with a fake address and fake info. So bare minimum, they were being protected. So that is a stage one, partial false flag, bare minimum.
Let me explain something to you. We usually have a very effective FBI. Trust me, when they're able to hand me subpoenas because I go on your show, or I've committed acts for our country 35 years ago, and then they apologize saying that we're spending hundreds of thousands to give you a subpoena, even though it's not appropriate. They're very capable of monitoring what's going on and stopping anyone from coming in. Now, it's important to understand.
Well, let's stop right there. I didn't know you got subpoenaed. Hold on, Steve. Hold on, Steve. Steve Pieczenik's our guest.
Yeah. You
got subpoenaed by the FBI about coming on my show?
Well, yeah, basically because I had talked about, and I brought up in the books the issue of the Red Brigade and what happened in Italy, although I never went into detail. So I got subpoenaed by the Miami-Dade prosecutor, and basically they brought in a Italian prosecutor who had spoken.
Oh, that's right. I saw that a while back.
That's correct, but that's not the issue. The issue is we have a dysfunctional government.
Well, that was a good piece of work you did with the Red Brigade. You got to be really proud of that one.
Well, I'm not proud of anything right now. I'm more proud of you and what's happening to the United States, because gloating about the past is not really the issue at hand. What's the issue at hand is you brought on Trump, you're speaking the truth, and now through your vehicle we can say this president is committing crimes against the United States, as Obama, as Cheney had committed crimes, and Bush, and there is no accountability. The FBI has.
Well, let's go back, and then I'll give you the floor. I want to go back to the FBI because that's interesting. So specifically, did they apologize to you for investigating you, for doing stuff for the CIA and the State Department?
No, what they basically do is say, we're following orders. It was like the German Nazi era. I mean, what you have now is really everybody doing their duty without really thinking twice about what they had to do. I had to spend $20,000 in cash to a crooked lawyer who never even showed up at times to my hearing. And basically, my wife, who was born in an American family and that came here in 1628, was so furious. She started to yell at the prosecutor and say, how dare you bring in an American military officer who was a deputy assistant secretary to answer questions to this incompetent Italian fool. But that's not the issue. The issue at hand is we have the continuation of corruption and crimes. And this is where America has to say it's enough. We don't have a year left for Obama to finish out. Obama will create more false flags. He's not in charge. The CIA, probably with Brennan and with the DNI and with a whole bunch of others who are involved that you've never heard of, SOCOM, or the fact that we've used mercenary soldiers and we've used special forces and we've taken off the epaulets to go in there as non-combatants, basically, and fighting in rules of engagement that we're not used to. What's happening is we're creating a fear dynamic which is blown up by the Republicans, and at the same time, Hillary is totally not qualified to answer it. The only thing that can happen is we need an immediate change of government with somebody like Trump who can begin to assess what's going on and perhaps is.
Well, let's go back then, Dr. Pieczenik. Let's go back because you were excited about the Trump thing and saw it as a key sea change point. So let's break down why you think that interview was so important.
Well, the reason that interview is important is for 14 years you have been carrying the water in an amazing way to disseminate the truth as we truthers and others who understood what was happening in the government were trying to get out in terms of an outlet. You were the only one on the radio and TV, quite frankly, who said, you know what, Dr. Pieczenik, I don't know you, but I suspect that you're correct when I said 14 years ago that whoever is going to be president of the United States, and I didn't know who would be president, nor did anybody, would basically declare that he was going to be victorious by having killed Osama bin Laden. And, of course, the idiot Obama and McRaven and the rest of the SEAL team and the rest of the intelligence community fell for that PSYOPs trap.
And let's go further. A year after you were on, and then 3 years after you were on 14 years ago, the Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, came out and said exactly what you said. He's dead. They're going to roll him out. And then even Walter Cronkite said he talked to high-level folks that said that was true. So we know this is going on. But for me, it signifies. Why are you important?
Let me get to the point to the American public. You are important because basically you have been the game changer in the entire business of the media. Now, I've known the media very well, from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, all of them, Roger Ailes. Basically, their job is to get ratings and to get money for whatever content they produce. Your job, which I really didn't know from the beginning, was to assess the facts that were out there, and thanks to your own intuitive knowledge and sense of righteousness, you went on to say, okay, let me hear what the alternatives are. And you continued with it. And in that sense, to me, you represented the American public, the public I knew, the people who worked hard, the people who had to earn a living, the people who went to jobs on a daily basis, not the politicians like Hillary or Obama or Bush, who were entitled little brats who never spent a day in work, who never went and served the military, who never had to pay a mortgage, who never had to pay anything else other than the money that they accrued from book sales and self-aggrandizement. Those days are over, and what happened is you allowed a Trump to come in, thanks to Mr. Roger Stone, whom I've known about since the Reagan administration. And he was brilliant enough to say, you know what, we're going to legitimize the people who've been out there called the truthers and the wackos, the 20 million of us, who basically are saying, Bush, Cheney, Obama, you're wrong. Not only are you wrong, you're criminal.
Well, to show your inside baseball, I didn't know you knew Stone. I knew of Stone. I didn't know how much high-level stuff he was involved in. I mean, elections in the third world, folks, put 2 + 2 together. But He's really a really great guy. I'm trying to get him back into town next week. And the behind-the-scenes stuff I learned, Trump knows a lot more, obviously, than the public knows. And Stone was basically talking about how many really good people in the government are basically saying what you're saying, that none of them were ever perfect. But they now realize this country's going to be brought down if we don't turn things around and stop this hijacking of the government by select groups at the top.
I agree with you. Well, I know of Roger Stone. I don't know him personally, but I've had a lot of respect for him. But I've had an immense amount of respect for Trump. And I'll give you an example. When he went on your radio, he went into detail about Afghanistan, that we sent our boys to die there for no reason, while the Chinese are picking up rare earths, lithium, and all the other minerals. And he was right on. Then he talked about inversion, which Hillary Clinton has no idea about. Obama has no idea because he thinks that Goldman Sachs is a brilliant entity, although he knows it's as crooked as the day is long. And this is the kind of man that we need right now. We don't have a year. And if I can say anything to your audience, we do not have 1 year left to live out this administration.
Stop right there. Steve, I want you to, because I skipped this break, it's so important, I want you to flesh out, because a lot of people say, and Trump said, well, you know, it'll make him a martyr politically if we go after him. He's in so much trouble. You know, I don't know if we have time in the next year, but my concern is the way Obama's acting, the way his people are acting, the way they're getting really nasty and really making more and more stuff up, they're acting like they're getting ready to move against the American people. And so if you agree with that, I'd like to know what you think we should be watching out for, what they might pull.
Well, what I agree with is that he is out of control, and he's fronting for an organization that's consisting of the Pritzkers, the Chicago Rami Emanuel, who, by the way, was being prosecuted for incompetency, lying, and distortion, even by the New York Times. And what we had was a distraction in San Bernardino from his good friend and buddy from childhood, Rami Emanuel, and the Chicago mob. And that's part of what San Bernardino was about, was to take away the attention when the New York Times asked for the resignation of Rami Emanuel and the entire government of Chicago. So what we expect to have is more denial, more crimes, and more distortions of the truth. What we need to do is to initiate a referendum where we will ask the president to step down. I do not want an assassination. What I want is a referendum where the people say we can no longer wait for a year. We do not want anyone else, and we will want to nominate by choice Trump. And either we have the elections now or we don't have the elections. We do not have 1 more year. And all this nonsense that's going on where ISIS is supposedly creating terrorist attacks all over the world, which they're not, quite frankly. You got to remember the 2 leaders of ISIS, the soul and the military arm, were both in our prisons in Baghdad for over 8 months. And if anybody in your audience believes that we in the military or the intelligence community didn't double up these guys, and ISIS should know this, and every Sunni...
They would have never been released. Muslim, they would have been given acid baths if they weren't double agents.
They are double agents for us. So anybody who follows these fools knows that they're following CIA and military intelligence operatives who've been doubled by us easily, and then we create the false flags, the false enemies, which basically we claim are Muslims. The Muslims are not our enemies. They are the enemies, perhaps, of Israel, who has a problem with their survival, but we are not.
Well, I'll say this. Obviously, Wahhabists being brought in is meant for there to be attacks, so the government's bringing them in. They are, at the top of the food chain, guilty.
Let me be very frank. In my business, and they know this from my past experiences, it's easy for me to take out the Wahhabis and the Salafists in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. That's the easiest work I can do. But fortunately, they're not letting me or others do that kind of work because they're easy to neutralize the way they were neutralized in other countries and other worlds, which I was involved with. But unfortunately, our government is involved in creating these episodes. Like Bush Sr. was involved in allowing Noriega to start agitation propaganda. Why? Because he wanted an excuse to send in the 82nd Air Force.
Well, absolutely. But here's my question. I think they've misjudged the calculus to be able to bring in radical jihadis, have them attack us, and then take our guns and restrict internet free speech as Hillary's trying to do. I see how they brought them in to let them do it. I get it's a false flag ultimately because they brought them in. I just don't see how they think they'll get away with that.
Well, let me put this one. I really have to look back at San Bernardino, and you look at Como, the interviewer, in the newspaper, on CBS or ABC, where he asked the lawyer, there are many holes in this story. Number one, both the husband and wife were handcuffed. Number two, they were able to Twitter while they were shooting. Number three, you have a high military operation where even if you were a Black Widow, you couldn't be trained in this, particularly if you're 90 pounds. And the other man had no idea of how to deal with military capacity. But there was a third man who nobody talked about. My point to you is this is consistent with Sandy Hook. Once you have lied, once you have contrived false scenarios,
just go all the way.
Continuously be a liar, and you will continuously be.
Well, there is some evidence that the husband and wife were decoys and there were other shooters, and that's usually how you do it.
Exactly. That's exactly what I must have. But the issue isn't this. The issue is much greater. Can we continue with a criminal like Obama, who is protected by incompetent Secret Service that has been rife with prostitution, alcoholism. And
Dr. Pieczenik, stay there. We got to go to break in 60 seconds. Stay there. We're going to come back, and we're going to get into some of his anti-terrorism operations he was in, because they're so interesting. What he can talk about, a lot of it still partially classified, but really interesting fellow. And, yeah, when he comes on the show, then I guess they try to indict him and stuff for the things he talks about. So I don't know. The audience realizes the stuff you're hearing here. I mean, this guy's really is very interesting, to say the least. We'll be right back. Don't forget, free shipping until December 18th at InfoWarsStore.com. And your purchase makes it all possible. InfoWarsStore.com. All right, 5-minute segment here, 12-minute segment coming up with Dr. Steve Pieczenik. We've got our reporters from San Bernardino, California, joining us with video and audio feeds at the bottom of the hour, Joe Biggs and others. Don Salazar just ran in here and he said what Dr. Pieczenik just talked about, there being other reported shooters, is true. And I remember seeing that in the news, but we have a CBS News clip they're going to put in the computer. We're going to play later, next segment, where one witness said, no, there were 3 tall white males